Welcome to the Experience of the Soul podcast with Cynthia Alice Anderson, a weekly show helping you grow, prosper, and evolve.
Today, episode 363.
Your spiritual questions answered. And now, Experience of the Soul.
Hello, my dear friends, and welcome to the Experience of the Soul podcast. My name is Cynthia Alice Anderson. I'm the host, and I'm here today in my studio with my talented, amazing, handsome, and fabulous producer, Mr. Shawn Kilgore.
Thank you so much. That was quite the intro. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Experience of the Soul podcast with Cynthia Alice Anderson. My name is Shawn. I am your producer. I'm so happy to be here with you as always. It is a beautiful Monday, June 2nd. And of course, today we are doing what might be our last one for a little while, but we're going to keep taking your questions to do this again because it's been so successful. So today we are doing more of your spiritual questions answered. So we'll get into that in just a moment. But of course, we want to start with This Week in Spiritual History for today, Monday, June 2nd. So as always, we're exploring inspiring moments from around the world that helped shape our spiritual lives. So we're going to start it off with a big church meeting that happened back in 553 AD. So this week, way back in the year 553, a major church meeting called the Second Council of Constantinople came to a close. This was when church leaders gathered to talk about big questions of faith and to clear up any confusion about what Christians believed. These early meetings helped shape how Christianity grew and, of course, stayed connected across different parts of the world.
Yeah, we're still working on that, Shawn.
Right? All these years later.
All these 2,000 years later, yeah.
And then in Lyon, France, we got a couple of things to talk about. Also this week, we remember a group of early Christians in Lyon, France, including a young woman named Blandina, who stood strong in their faith, even in a time when it was very dangerous to do so. So their bravery is still honored today by many people in France, and they look at them as a way to find hope and strength.
Sweet.
As they go throughout life. And also in Lyon, France, this week was a time they used to call the Feast of Wonders. This was a time when they celebrated a mix of religious ceremonies and community celebration. They would come together. It was a joyful way to remember those who came before us and to feel connected to something bigger than ourselves. And I was telling RCA earlier, this sounds something like we would have totally dug, like we would have been there, because it was totally. like a fair or a festival. There was music and they did theatrical things. There was it seemed like just a really kind of like a Ren Fair as I was reading about it.
Right,
kind of what
that's what I was
like,
thinking, Shawn. When we were talking even before the show started, it sounded like a Ren festival. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it says the wonders referred to more of the miraculous or awe-inspiring aspects of the Christian faith, which included relics and biblical stories that were dramatized into plays.
That's a lot of fun. Well, it's funny because at Unity of Daytona Beach, where I'm currently the spiritual leader and minister, senior minister, we were talking about doing some of that. So I'm just laughing to myself that it's still fun to do dramatizations of the scriptures because it brings it to life in a different way, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. That's a part of how I got into everything that I do. I mean, was doing plays in church, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Also, on June 2nd in 1924, Native Americans were given citizenship. So on June 2nd, 1924, the Indian Citizenship Act became law. So before this, Native Americans weren't considered full U.S. citizens, even though their ancestors lived here long before anyone else. This law was a step toward recognizing their value and honoring their traditions, cultures, and spiritual wisdom.
Yes, imagine that you could be a citizen of the land you already own.
Right.
But at least we want to honor it. It was at least some effort made. And, I know, was it just last week we were talking about the National Sorry Day in Australia?
Yes.
And that's happened in Canada. It's not yet happened in the U.S., and I'm just holding that it will because the Indigenous people of America, as they're called in Canada, the First Nations people, we continue to learn a lot, and friends, they're still here. There's still treaties not being honored. So I just honor all of our Indigenous people of the Americas, my ancestors, the Cherokees, and all Native peoples. So bless you, my friends, and we honor you and your journey and our journey together.
Indeed. And then finally, a fun one we have for you today, June 2nd, is National Rocky Road Day. So this is a time to enjoy this classic ice cream flavor made of chocolate, marshmallows, and nuts. Of course, a sweet reminder that life is full of ups and downs, and sometimes all we need is a scoop of joy. And boy, have I been there. I've had more than just one scoop of joy in my bowl at a time.
Well, the owner I know of Kelly's Ice Cream does listen to the show, so I'll have to
I'm
ask
gonna go
him.
get me a whole pint of joy.
Yeah, right, exactly.
All right.
Well, it's so
ahead.
hot in Orlando, this summer, and I was trying to be healthy, so I took juice and made like little popsicles. So the other day, with my son and his girlfriend and myself, we just sat out on the back porch with our little popsicles. It was like
that
being
is hysterical.
It was so fun. I got these little juices and I mixed them up and made these little popsicles, and it was a lot of fun. I have to admit, it was like being a kid again. It was, and it brought a lot of joy.
Sometimes I don't understand our connection because I'm not joking. I actually made popsicles out of the liquid IV. Yeah, like last week I did this. I mixed up liquid IV and I poured it into these tubes and made like tube popsicles.
What day was it? Because I just did it also. Was it like a few days ago?
Yeah, a few days ago. Yeah.
Me too.
Oh my gosh, that is crazy.
That is crazy how we've been connected. This is interesting. I don't know. Our little souls are connected. I tell you.
Big time. They've been together before.
Yes, we've been together before. Yes.
Yeah. So just to wrap up this week in spiritual history, just for something to think about as we like to end this segment with so much history and hope happening this week, we want to leave you with a question to think about. How can you honor someone else's story today and this week and find joy in your own story?
What a beautiful idea, Shawn. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I always love ending with that too, because, as serious as things are in the world, and they always have been, what we're seeing now, I mean, it seems to be a new level, but it's just coming to the surface. It's always been there, but we still have to find our joy, and we still have to connect, and we still have to know God, and we are still called to be kind and loving to ourselves and each other. So I love ending with that,
Yeah.
So good. So important.
Excellent. Well, let's get into it. Are you ready to answer some questions?
I guess so, Mr. Kilgore. I know There's some good ones today, a couple about the soul, I think.
Yeah, we got a couple of good ones here. We're going to kick it off today with, how do you tell the difference between the personality and the soul? And so the question continues, what is the ego? And is the ego the same as the personality?
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so first of all, we hear not a lot about the soul in the Bible, but we certainly hear about it. I used to know how many times the word soul was mentioned in the Bible, Shawn. That might be fun to look up. But one of the most famous scriptures, with that word in it, soul, is you are to love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. Right? You are to love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. But it doesn't explain much about what your soul is. But it's interesting because it differentiates that scripture, heart, mind, and soul. And in today's world, you'll often hear spirit, soul, and body. And so it just so happens I have a fidget spinner at my desk, and I'm somebody that has always fidgeted. And there's 3 aspects to this fidget spinner, and it's a great way to think about spirit, soul, and body. So I'm going to get to personality, I promise. But the spirit of us, I feel like it's good to start here, because the spirit of us is the part that never ever changes, right? It's the God aspect. And the soul of us is the aspect of us. And by the way, Shawn said soul is in the Bible 458 times. So the spirit of us is the part that never changes. The soul is our individual memory. It is our beliefs, our thoughts, our ideas. It is with us when we are born, and it is what we take with us when we die. So the soul is eternal. It is connected to spirit, and it is housed by the third part, which is the body, right? And so even though the soul is housed by the body and is our individual expression in this world, the soul is actually larger than the body and is often called a part of our etheric field. So the soul is very, very powerful because it is in the here and now reality, housed in the body, but it's also connected to spirit. So it's connected to eternity and to all of our memories. So when I say all of our memories, the soul is eternal, as it says in the Bible. And as I studied more deeply in scriptures, and then I started studying other sacred texts, I found it interesting that the oldest religions talk about the soul much more, and that in the teachings of the East, for instance, Hinduism, and by the way, some scholars believe, this is well written about, some modern scholars believe Jesus may have gone to India to study, because so much of what he shared in his teachings, because we don't know anything about Jesus basically from age 12 until 30, but many believe he went there to learn, because so many of his teachings sound so much like the Eastern teachings of oneness and Hinduism. So I don't think that's necessary to believe to understand what I'm saying. I'm just trying to give you an idea of what some of the modern scholarship is around these topics. But when I started studying Hinduism, it was almost completely about the soul, about the soul's incarnating, about the soul's reincarnating, about working in the best interest of the soul. In other words, making good decisions so that our soul can move forward and evolve. As a matter of fact, the theme of our show, to grow, prosper, and evolve, is a very Eastern idea. And so it might seem I'm getting a little off topic, but I promise I'm not, because I'm explaining that the soul is the part of us that has been with us always. It is with us when we go to sleep and when we wake up. It is with us when we are happy or sad. It's with us when we are babies. It's with us when we die. It is part of us when we're in our mom's womb. That the soul of us is eternal. And because of that, it holds our memories, our thoughts, our beliefs, and our ideas. So, what is the difference between the personality and the soul? So I said all that about the soul to say it is important. It is the most important in our spiritual journey to know and live from soul. It's why I do what I do. It's why the podcast is called Experience of the Soul. And I know that as a soul, we're here to grow. I know that we're here as a soul to move forward, to prosper, to evolve. In other words, we're here to grow into the very soul we were intended to be. In other words, to be like the Christ essence, to become an enlightened being the way Jesus was enlightened. It's going to take us a long time, but Jesus said to us in the Bible, "Know ye not, ye are gods." So this is the soul. So what is the personality? Well, the personality is created, and psychology's really helped us with this one, but the personality is created as we have grown developmentally through the various stages. The personality is created as we learn to survive and try to thrive in our family of origin. So in every family, there is a way that the family operates. A lot of times it's called the family code. Like, for instance, in some families, and Shawn, I don't want to ask you specifically about your family, but in some families, people will, as soon as you meet them, they'll give you a big hug. Like, that's part of the family code. So
yeah, we're huggers.
We're
huggers.
We are.
Yeah.
If I bring a friend or whatever, a significant other home, everybody will say, oh, we're huggers. And they'll just give them a hug. They don't even give them a choice.
Same.
Yeah. But all right. So we grew up. That was part of our family code. So that helped shape our personality. In other words, we're comfortable in general with somebody giving us a hug. Well, if we grew up in a home where no one hugged and we did not show love through touch, our personality would be very different. Now, notice I was very careful to say the word personality, not soul. Even though our soul is impacted, our personality is kind of how we learn to face the world. So if we learn in our family that, we're not huggers, we go out to the world and we might have kind of a wall up and we might distance ourselves. So does that mean that our soul is not developing? It does not mean that. It means some of us learn to not be very expressive. Of course, I learned to be very expressive. I was the entertainment for my siblings' dates. So I was like, yeah, so I learned to be very expressive. That's part of my personality. Now, if I grew up in a home where the environment was subdued, where we were to be very quiet, that would change how I walked through the world. But the soul of me would not be necessarily damaged by that. It would simply be a different way to face the world. So the personality is shaped by our family of origin experience. And even though I firmly believe we call forth the family that we're born into, that the personality is shaped by how we give and receive love and how the family operates, by and large, the family code operates. And so we learn to survive in this environment. If we do something and somebody likes it, we think, okay, let me do that again. And that becomes a part of us. We kind of adopt it as a way of being. But now under that personality, so the personality is just a learned way, based on our environment, but the soul is already inherent in us. We come with certain, I'll call it soulful presets that we are seeking to live from. And so those personality pieces that are kind of placed on top of the soul that we learn to do, I want to mention here that even though we learn to do them is not necessarily good or bad, that we learn to do them as a way of surviving. But what we learn over time is that if we learned it when we were, 6 months old, 3 years old, even 10 years old, that when we're 20 years old or 40 years old, those ways of relating through the personality may no longer work. For instance, I've known many people and clients who have grown up in situations that were manipulative, where they were around a lot of lying. And what they learned is that lying is how I get my way. And you've got 30 and 40-year-olds walking around lying about what they're doing simply because that's what they learned behaviorally at the level of the personality. At the soul level, they wanted to do the right thing. They wanted to live a good life. And so there was a conflict. The conflict was between the learned behavior and what the soul knew to be right already because of the soulful presets. So the personality is developed over time as a result of the behaviors and how we learn to survive. I want to reiterate that it is not bad to have a personality. And the reason I wanted to talk about that is because if you read a lot of things from the East, it says, kill your ego or squash your ego or whatever. And the idea in the Eastern teaching is we are to live completely from soul. But does God use our aspects of personality? Well, of course, like with me in my work, I have a big personality. And that soul of me, luckily, has learned to use that personality that likes to be in front of people, that likes to do fun things. That's helped me on my soul journey. And when I was, early on doing deeper work and I went to a teacher and I was asking her, what do I need to do? I want to grow and I want, God to know my heart. And I was just sitting there crying. And she said, well, you need to release your ego. And I said, well, I just got one. I just now learned I was of value. And she said, but you're not your personality. You are your soul. And so I understood what she meant, that the goal is to live from the soul and not the kind of pasted on personality that we learn, how to cope and how to operate. But those do work together. I don't think we obliterate the personality. I think we temper the personality with the soul, and that the soul of us is absolutely the most important. But I don't think any of us get to the point of no personality. I don't think that's a realistic expectation. I think that the personality, though, is a false self because we learn to operate a certain way, and that the soul is much bigger, grander, smarter, more connected than the personality. So the personality tends to be transactional, and the soul of us tends to just simply be a presence that's always available to us. So these are distinct parts that do work together. But I want to say a third way that it is not bad to have a personality, that the personality of you is simply how you learn to get love, and that you release more and more parts of it as you begin to live from soul. So the more you live from soul, the less you live from personality. So the second part of the question, though, what is the ego? Is it the same as personality? So I've learned that in spiritual settings, and I've done it myself, we tend to demonize the ego and the personality. And we also tend to use those words interchangeably, like, oh, I've heard people say, oh, she's in her ego or he's in his ego. Well, it can be confusing if you've been in psychology, because in psychology, well, I'll say Jungian psychology, the ego is basically the self, the center of consciousness, our sense of personal identity. And so when in spiritual settings, we say the ego, we really mean the personality, the false self. And so I've heard people say the ego stands for edging God out. And the idea is that we're limiting ourselves by living from this smaller self or the personality self. And so even though the words ego and personality get used basically interchangeably, I think we want to try to get out of the habit of doing that and basically calling the limited self the personality, because it was developed, as we aged and grew developmentally, and the soul has always been with us. So the difference is my soul is eternal. My personality has developed over time to learn how to get and give love. But the personality tends to be transactional, and the soul is simply a presence, always with us, always guiding us, always helping us. And the soul contains the absolute of us, our thoughts, memories, beliefs, and ideas. Now, Shawn, I think there was a third, I think that really answers that question. I wanted to go deeply into it, but there was one other question we were going to try to get in, which was the last one today, right? Or were there two more? Okay.
So just the one more. But so okay. This question is, Jesus vibrates at a high frequency. Is vibration where the power comes from?
Okay, I want you to read that one more time. This is a deep question.
Jesus vibrates at a high frequency. Is vibration where the power comes from?
Okay. I think the best way to answer this is that that high vibing, I have a friend that calls it, Faith Rivera calls it high vibing conversations. She'll say, let's talk and have a high vibe conversation. I think the higher vibration is indicative of more God connection and less personality. That's why it's great to do those together. So is the vibration what makes it? I think we all have access to the higher vibrations. And I think that the more we release the personality, the higher our vibration becomes, because we're already connected to God. Like, if we could shed years of trauma, years of even abuse or what we've been through, our vibration would naturally raise, because we are releasing these heavy, dense things that happened, circumstances that happened. And so is the vibration, what was the last part of the question? Because it's a really good question. Say it again, Shawn.
Is, yeah. Is vibration where the power comes from? Right.
So the power comes from God, but the vibration is the indicator of more power. And the world operates really according to vibration. Even our voices as we speak, if we're mad, there's tenseness in our voice and it's a different vibration than if we're happy, right? We go, woo, we're happy. So everything is vibration. Everything is made of a vibration. And we're even told, the Hindus say the vibrational sound that started the universe is the Om. And our scriptures say, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. What is the Word? Well, it is a sound, a sacred sound. So see, in my mind, those are the same. I don't need to argue with the Hindu. It's a word, because the word is the logos. So sound and vibration is what everything is made of. And our vibration rises as we release the attachment to the personal, the personality, as the Bible says, the world. The world is very dense and very heavy. And spirit presence is very light and free and airy. And so the more we're connected to spirit, in other words, the more we pray, the more we meditate, the more we connect with God, the higher our vibration. And I've seen it happen with individuals I care about. I've seen it in my own life, where if my prayer and meditation life is not as on board as I'd like it to be, my vibration gets lower. Things bother me that don't normally bother me. I get frustrated easily. When I get reconnected to spirit, I notice my vibration raises, and all these little things that were bothering me before, I just go, the wind blew. That was just dust. That's no big deal. Just let's move on. My vibration is raised. So, but was that vibrational reality always there? Yes. And so it's not really the vibration. It's the vibration is an indicator of spiritual connection. And I think in history, we could say that Jesus was the most connected of any individual we know. And I just love that other religions and denominations study Jesus, and I honor them. The Self-Realization Fellowship, that was started by Paramahansa Yogananda, I learned more about Jesus from them than I did some of the Christians I've known, simply because of their reverence and study of Jesus, his miracles, and as we're talking about, his vibrational reality. So when we think about the miracles, when we think about the feeding of the 5,000 or people being healed in Jesus's presence, or like the woman who we're told simply touched his garment, healing happened because of his God connection, and that high vibration was an indicator of that connection. And so I wanted to explain that a little bit, because I think as we learn to connect, as we learn to be present to our spiritual nature, as we learn to listen and go within and connect with God through our prayers, through our affirmations, through deep breathing, through meditation and visualization, then it helps us raise our vibration out of fear and anger and into love and light. And that love and light is free and high vibing. So I think my dear friends, this is an important question because the power is in knowing God and connecting with God. And as we do that, our vibration gets lighter, freer, easier. Life gets better when we're out of fear. Life gets better when we're in light. Life gets better when we're in love. And that's a higher vibing way of walking through the world. So I hope that helps you, my friend who asked this. And I appreciate the questions, all of the questions. And my dear friends, we are blessed to bring you the show. And I'm so honored to receive your financial support. It helps us stay on the air and pay all the bills. And this is really, really wonderful. We've been able to expand, what we're doing. So friends, thanks again for listening. We're honored to support your journey. And if you have not gone over yet to the Soulworks community, it's my.soulworkscommunity.com. And we love to have you be a part of it. There is a free level, and I'll tell you, you get a lot at the free level. And the paid level is only $35 a month, which is 4 talks a month. And occasionally you get 5 for that. And only every now and then do we cancel for a national holiday when people are vacationing. But we love to have you on the network, and I'm honored to support your journey in whatever way works for you. So we have affirmations, meditations, Monday night talks, and our goal, my friend, is to give you the high vibing stuff, the things that will support your journey, that will lift you up, that will remind you of the truth, and most definitely help you grow, prosper, and evolve as a soul. So we bless you. We thank you for being with us, and Shawn and I are very, very honored to work with you and for you on your spiritual journey. Blessings on the journey, my dear friends, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Experience of the Soul podcast with Cynthia Alice Anderson, helping you grow, prosper, and evolve. This podcast is made possible because of listeners and viewers just like you. If you would like to support the podcast with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head on over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. The Experience of the Soul podcast is copyright 2025 Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved, and is produced by Shawn Kilgore.
A production of the Soulworks Group, Incorporated.
Hey friends, Shawn here, your Experience of the Soul producer. I want to take a moment to tell you about something truly exciting. The Soulworks online community, created by your host, Cynthia Alice Anderson, and available on the Mighty Networks app. If you're looking for a place where you can explore your spiritual path, connect with others, and grow in a meaningful way, then this is for you. Soulworks is so much more than an online community. It's a safe, inclusive space for spiritual exploration, self-discovery, and personal transformation. Inside the community, you'll find everything from uplifting spiritual studies to soul-centered growth practices, meditations, affirmations, and so much more. It's a space where you'll always be supported and never judged. The best part, membership is free. You'll have access to powerful resources, inspiring content, and a supportive group of like-minded people who are all on their own unique spiritual journeys. And if you're ready to dive deeper, there are premium options available to enhance your experience, with a live Monday night talk series and extended, deeper meditations. If you're seeking a place to connect, grow, and nurture your soul, we would love to have you join us in the Soulworks community and see where this journey can take you. Visit my.soulworkscommunity.com today.